Well, this is our final tutorial on the expense database. Just want to put in the pivot charts and the pivot table and pivot chart. It's really quite easy. You remember in the last tutorial that we got our user form working, so that when we click our user form it comes up. We can then add our data in here, whatever it might be can go in. I'll just put in some information and then we'll add that data through. Alright, well let's view the data. There's the information we just put in. Now we want to create a pivot table and pivot chart to dynamically track this information. And we want to put it here on our front sheet. So click in the cell where you'd like it to occur, push the Insert tab at the top of the ribbon, and then go to Pivot Table and choose Pivot Chart. Now a dialog box will appear. Into the dialog box we're going to put our named range for that range. Click F3 to show us our named range box, our paste name, and click Summary and OK. Choose OK again. So here's our pivot chart and our pivot table. Alright, let's put our categories in. We'll drop our date category into the top field here. We'll put our store category into the rows. We're going to put the category field into columns and the amount we'll put into values. So there we have it. Alright, just close our box here. Everything looks good. Just make sure, go to options and make sure you have the field headers checked. If you don't have the field headers checked, you're going to lose the headers on the top there and the drop downs in them. So make sure that's checked. Go back and click anywhere inside your data table, go to design and choose a nice design. I'm going to choose one in harmony with the orange theme that we're using. I'll choose that as the theme. Click down on your pivot chart. Drag it over to the right if you like to make it the same width or a similar width. Okay, I'm just going to I'll just zoom that down to 90% so we'll be able to see it all. I'm doing this on a small laptop. Okay, so we've got our pivot table, we've got our pivot chart. You might want to change this around. I don't need the categories here, so I'm going to take them out, and I don't like the lines in the back, but you might. And so again, I'll just remove those lines. Right, and you can then show with the pivot chart highlighted, you can then again put in a design, and I'm going to put in something a little bit 3D, seeing as we're using 2010. There's the design I'll put in, and it's in harmony with our theme. Well, that's it. The job is done. The only thing we need to do now is create a little macro to refresh the chart. So where will we find the refresh button? Well, the refresh button for this is going to be where? When we click in the pivot table, look under options, and there's the refresh button. So we'll leave that set up, go to our developer tab, and we're going to record the macro to refresh the pivot chart. We'll click record macro and we'll call it refresh. Go OK. And then all we need to do is go to options and click refresh. Go down to the bottom here and stop the recording of the macro. Let's go to our Visual Basic Editor and apply that to our user form. So Alt F11 will take us to the Visual Basic Editor, and then we want to find our user form. Before we do that, let's go to the module and let's just get that little bit of code that we created. We'll right click and copy that code. Double click on the user form, and where it says refresh, double click that button, it'll take you through to the code. If you notice up the top here, it's telling us we're in the refresh and the click event. Okay, so right click and choose paste. And there it is. That will now automatically refresh our pivot table and pivot chart. We don't need this module any longer, so right click that and remove the module. We don't need to save it, so just say no. The next thing we need to do, we just have one more small piece of information to put, and it's not in here, it's on our sheet, but we'll create, just click into macro expenses, and I'd like you to create this macro. It's called sub return to sheet 1 select range A1 select. So So it's just taking us back to the data entry sheet. Alright? And then go to your database sheet, grab this user form here, copy it, go to the database sheet and paste it. Now that you have it there, just edit the text. So the text is going to be return, and our macro, we'll just assign the macro that we want here, it's going to be return to, and we'll go OK. Now our macro will take us back. Well, there you have it. Put a nice bit of a name up here to name your little database, but that's the end of the project really. That's all we need to do. Now when you put in information into our user form here, when you add categories, the pivot table will expand either way. When we put in information, let's put something in here. We'll put in a category of internal painting and the amount. Alright, here's our test. We're adding our data in and we're refreshing our data here. You noticed it added another column in there. Previously we didn't have that in there, and it's refreshed all the data for us. It's added another column over here as well, another bar. So that's the end of the project. I hope you've enjoyed that. Fiddle around with it, apply it to what you want. There's some really good things to learn there. Remember, just in recapping, we learned about dynamic named ranges, we learned about the Visual Basic Editor, about user forms, about pivot charts, pivot tables, and basic information about all of that. And you can now use that to be able to improve your skills in Microsoft Excel. Thanks for listening.